Hi, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Making a Difference in Mental Health. I'm your host, Danielle Young.
I'm your co-host, Wendy Grier.
Wendy, who do we have today?
Well, I am happy to say today for our episode 2, we have one of our colleagues who is a prescriber who works out of the Baltimore and Carroll offices. And I'd like to give a warm welcome to Jonathan Englard.
Hi, Jonathan.
Hi,
Jonathan.
Hi, good morning. Great to be here.
So,
thanks for coming. Thanks for coming. We're glad to have you.
So today we're going to talk about a topic that seems very simple, but in essence can be very complex. And that's sleep. Right, Jonathan? Sleep. It's what I don't think you get it and I get it.
I don't get enough.
So we don't get enough.
This is an appropriate conversation. I need tips. I need help.
I know. I think our audience does as well, especially parents who have kids who are teenagers who don't like to sleep. So I'm really excited that we have a chance to discuss it. So Jonathan, kick it off for us. Tell us a little bit about yourself. How did you get into being a prescriber to ABH? What's your journey?
Got it. So it's interesting. I don't know if it's like the typical journey. I actually used to be a teacher. I taught in a private Jewish day school for, I don't know, close to 10 years. And then it was time to make a change. I was looking for something that, I feel I can help people, something that I enjoy. And this was right down my alley. I worked at Sinai Hospital for a couple of years, and I had a great experience there. But one thing I loved about advanced behavioral health was I get to see all the different ages. I see children as young as 3 or 4 years old, and I see adults like in their 60s or 70s. So I like to see the whole gamut of all the different ages. And the second thing that I loved about advanced behavioral health is, very important for me was to find a really good mentor, someone I could speak to, and I was really pleased when I heard that Dr. Ba was the medical director with a lot of experience, and she's been really helpful in making me the best psych MP that I can be.
Absolutely. I love it that you highlighted the variety of clients that we serve and of the counties that we are in, and you focusing on Baltimore County and Carroll County, and the fact that you shout out your boss, Dr. Boss. She's been on our podcast.
She's been here a few times, so that's
and she's coming back. Yeah. So we're excited to have her in the future as well.
So we want to go ahead and get started with just some of the questions for our audience and even for ourselves, particularly me, because sleep is something that we often talk about, even behind the scenes. We talk about, oh, how much sleep did you get last night? Or, you're feeling a little bit tired. So can you discuss with us just the importance of sleep? And then maybe, is there a population that kind of suffers from sleep issues?
Yeah. So great question. First of all, it's important to know that I know you mentioned at the beginning that you could use a little more sleep. I think we all could use a little more sleep. But actually, the CDC actually talks about how really 1 out of 3 people have difficulty sleeping. There are some studies that talk about maybe even up to 50% of people have could use some more sleep. And definitely, it's recommended to get for most people to get at least 7 hours of sleep. And I don't know. I know a lot of people out there aren't getting 7 hours of sleep. So sleep is really, really important.
Danielle's not getting 7 hours of sleep.
Absolutely. So you talked about let's say which populations it's maybe a greater struggle for. Definitely the geriatric population, let's say 65 years and older. According to studies, that very often they have a difficulty in terms of sleep. According to other studies about females, sometimes have a more difficult time sleeping. Another, definitely substance abuse can be definitely a population of people who struggle with sleeping. And just sleep is super important. You asked earlier about why is sleep so important. A lack of sleep could really not only contribute to mental health conditions, but also to physical health conditions. Definitely, the studies talk about it. We don't have enough sleep that can contribute to heart disease, to high blood pressure, to diabetes, and for a lot of people, wouldn't be happy to hear that it could also lead to obesity, right? So the more sleep, maybe the less pounds. So that's a good motivation to get enough sleep.
Honestly, when you were talking about the statistics of 1 out of 3, I mean, we're 3 people on this cast right now. I know that Wendy does very well with sleep.
I'm not quite sure how 7 hours.
Right. I'm not quite sure how you do, but the statistic, right now is kind of live in color. I do have challenges with sleep, and I am a female. And I think for me, thoughts run. I'm very creative,
right.
Or, just oftentimes being busy, multitasking, having a number of things on your plate. And then something that you said about lack of sleep or challenges with sleep that is linked to obesity and other health issues, I can say, it potentially there are smaller things that lead up to it, like maybe eating late at night because you can't sleep, or watching TV and you're sedentary and you're not moving. So, these are really good statistics. This is really good information, and it's a really good place and way to kind of evaluate yourself. So I do have challenges with that, but it's a practice and it's a discipline that we've been talking about for a while that, I definitely need to implement and exercise.
And we do see it in all of, the clients that we serve. And so, like I said, it's such a simple topic name, but it's such a complex thing for so many people. So Jonathan, tell us a little bit. You're the prescriber, right, for Baltimore and Carroll. And so at times clients are in need of medication. How do you see sleep and medication management together? Integral part of each other? Is important to have one as opposed to the other? We live in a society where people want quick fixes, right? They want, just give me a pill. But how do you, from your approach, your clinical approach and practice, deal with clients who come see you or patients who come see you that have sleep challenges, but then also want a medication?
That's a great question. And like you said, a lot of people like, give me a pill, I can't sleep well. And so rule number one for me is I want to give you the least amount of medication possible as a prescriber, right? The more medications you take, the more chances there are of side effects. There are more chances of medications interacting with one another. So my goal is to give you the least amount of medications as possible. And the key is we need to rule out, are there things that are happening that are causing the difficulty with either falling asleep or difficulty staying asleep? Those are generally the two challenges when it comes to sleep. It's falling asleep and staying asleep. So we need to rule out, are there any other causes there? Right? Am I taking naps in the afternoon? Right? And that's why I can't fall asleep at nighttime. Am I not exercising at all? Right? But I don't move around at all. My body tells me you're not moving around. I guess you don't need that. You don't need that much energy. And sometimes the sleep isn't as good. Maybe I'm doing things that are very high stimulation, where you talk about eating at night close to bedtime. Right? Maybe I'm doing those things close to bedtime. I always give the example to my patients. I'm a big sports fan. Right? If I'm watching a sports team, especially a team that I root on, I can't just go to bed after the game. I'm just too pumped up after the game. I'm too excited. I need some time to wind down. So it's truly important to have some time, some low stimulation time, some time to wind down before going to sleep. So those are important things to think about. Before going to medication, are there other things I can cut out before? Let's say, am I comfortable? Is it am I too hot? Am I too cold? Is the bed comfortable? Is everything else set up for success before I turn to medications for that?
I think that's you had some good points there that, it's people falling asleep and then people staying asleep are like the two primary issues. And I think, with our audience, I know we have a lot of parents out there listening who have teenagers. And I like what you said about, your sports enthusiasm and my sports enthusiasm. So yes, my Eagles played this weekend and I was super, super hyped. So it took me forever to kind of wind down and get ready and go to bed. But on a serious note, I think that's what a lot of parents are facing with their teenagers and gaming and staying up, midnight, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning, playing these video games. And it's just disruptive to their sleep patterns, their mood, overall mood, and, just how they, behave during the day. You see that, Danielle, because you're in school.
I work in a school, and I know I have some little ones between the ages. I work mainly with kindergarten to about 6th grade, and recently I've been having maybe between the 4th grade and maybe the 6th grade population coming in for either services or just wanting to chat or talk because they're falling asleep in class. Or, they're getting in trouble for falling asleep in class. And for them, going to bed at midnight, that is quite late for a 9-year-old or a 10-year-old. And you find out they're gaming. So I can imagine too, Jonathan, I'm kind of veering off a little bit, but if you can speak to this, I can imagine that maybe the overstimulation from the video games, from the lights on the TV, and like you said, comparing it to a sports team, being able to calm down or being able to kind of center yourself. I can imagine with video games, staying up that late, it would cause a child to, if they turn the game off at midnight, are they really going to fall asleep at 12:01? Is it going to be 12:30? Is it going to be 1 o'clock before they fall asleep? And a lot of times the kids are telling me, even though they've gone to bed between 11:30 and 12, they're probably not falling asleep until about 1 o'clock, having to get back up for school by 6:15.
Right. Yeah, it's definitely a big issue. I hear there's actually a lot of studies out there that talk about how less, especially teenagers and young adults, having a really difficult time sleeping because of almost like anxiety about missing an email, missing a text, missing a social media update. So it makes it very difficult to fall asleep. And for all these things related to social media, um, it's
Yes.
getting younger and younger. You see, like, it used to be like adults were getting it, teenagers. Now you see, even you talked about fourth or sixth graders, it's the same thing. And I think a lot of it is, you know, parents are assuming their kids are turning off their phone, turning off their TV, and
Right.
that's not really the case. So to me, it's a bit of a gamble. I know a lot of kids, they have TVs in their room, they have their cell phones in their room, and I think that's important. I'll tell parents that if your kids want to have that, they have to realize that's a privilege and not like a given. They don't have to have a TV in their room. They don't have to have their cell phones and their gaming. If they do that, that's a privilege, and they have to show that they're able to handle that and go to bed at a regular time. And if they don't do that, you have to do, as a parent, that's something you might want to step in and say, listen, we got to make sure you're getting enough sleep. We want to set you up for success. So that's something we need to weigh there.
That's a really good point, Jonathan. I didn't even factor in, even though we talk about it as well, the social media. When you think that their kids are asleep, they probably have their phone, if it's a phone, an iPad, some type of electronic device
That's right.
in bed with them while they're scrolling or while they're, talking or chatting. I do know that, again, for the older kids, maybe sixth to eighth grade, they're on the phone with their friends on a FaceTime all night long. They might even sleep with the
the
FaceTime
notification
on, the
alone.
notifications. Oh, I have to see what's on TikTok. I have to, so
Somebody sent me an Instagram.
Yes.
I gotta look at it right away.
So that's all really good information and good insight, even
it's a challenge for parents, right? That they need to start kind of giving, as you said, it's a privilege. It's not like a right for them to always have this stuff because they can't turn it off in their brains, and then they're not getting the necessary sleep that they need. So, Jonathan, what do you think about people who seek help through a psychiatrist, getting proper medication versus the ones that go to the drugstore and just get an over-the-counter med? Like, there's any difference? What do you think?
Right. I think, again, there's different types of over-the-counter. If you're talking about over-the-counter like melatonin, truthfully, I prescribe that sometimes, or I have patients get that over the counter, and that can be very effective for some people. Some people, I find it's a little bit hit or miss. Some people it works really well. Some people it's not effective for. Other ones, like people use like Sudafed or things like cough medications that can knock you out. I don't think that's generally a long-term recipe for success. The prescription medications are generally safer and really better built for long-term success. Other ones are really more transient. But even that, very often the prescription medications, they'll work for a while, and then it's not always a long-term solution. That's why the non-psychiatric methods for helping the sleep can sometimes be a really more of a long-term solution than even the prescription medications. And then in terms of prescription medications, when someone's prescribing it to you, we have to figure out, is it an issue falling asleep, like we were talking about before, or is it an issue staying asleep, or is it both? And we have to figure out, is it really necessary, or are there other things that we can do that could help, that could be really more of a long-term solution?
That's really good, John. It sounds like, within our conversation, you've been letting us know to have a certain discipline or certain boundaries. So, as we're wrapping up, would you happen to have maybe your top 5 tips when it comes to assisting, our audience, whether it be our clients, people within the community, even for myself?
Even Danielle.
Would you happen to have any? Okay. Would you happen to have any tips to increase the possibility of proper and restful sleep?
Sure. So I'll try to keep it to just 5. So I say one thing is definitely important is routine, right? That's one thing I think my wife has gotten me on board with. She's much more into, as we got married, routine. That wasn't the way, like, our families kind of grew up a little differently. My family wasn't as routine oriented as hers, but she's definitely got me on board with it. And I definitely see it makes a big difference with my children, having a set routine, having a certain bedtime, and they're up a certain time. Again, it doesn't mean there isn't any flexibility. It doesn't mean weekends can't be a little bit different, but it's definitely good to have them up by a certain time in the morning. That's really important in terms of routine. In terms of the afternoon, definitely trying to stay out of your bed unless you're going to sleep. Forget about napping. For sure, not napping, but even just being in your bed. If you're having a hard time sleeping, you want to kind of reserve your bed when you absolutely need it. let's say you're going to sleep, that's when you want to be in your bed. You don't want your kids doing your homework in their bed. You don't want yourself doing work in your bed. You really want to really minimize your time in your bed, so that your body kind of associates bed with sleep.
Yes.
Terrible right here. My kid stays in her bed, but she's a good sleeper.
A lot of us, we're comfortable in our bed. We can spend 24 hours a day in our bed. But again, and some people can get away with that. I used to joke how my brother could fall asleep on a roller coaster. He could sleep through anything.
Oh my God.
Some guys can do that, but most of us can't do that. Most of us need to have certain sleep hygiene, which is one of those buzzwords that's often mentioned sleeping.
Hygiene.
So that's another thing that's important. Definitely exercise is really important, but exercise shouldn't be done close to bedtime because again, it's stimulating. We want to do things that are stimulating during the daytime, get our body moving, let our body know we need the energy, we need the sleep. So that's really important during the daytime, but kind of, not doing that close to bedtime. Another thing is definitely things that are gonna keep us awake, right? It may sound obvious, but we forget about it. Caffeine, right? I've had patients tell me I can't sleep. I'm like, and I'll say, so how much coffee? Do you have any coffee? Do you have any caffeine? Yeah, I have like 6 cups of coffee a day, and including 3 in the afternoon. I'm like, that might be part of the reason why you're not sleeping well. So that's another thing I always talk about. Let's figure out solutions before we have to jump to medications. If we can cut down the caffeine, or especially keep it towards the morning at least, that's really important. Same thing with alcohol or nicotine. If we're gonna have to do that, at least keep it awake. Keep it at least like 4 to 6 hours prior to bedtime. So that's an important thing. And then definitely, like we were talking about earlier, things that are very stimulating, right? Electronics, cell phones, TV, stuff like that. Definitely, the American Academy, of Pediatrics recommends really be off that really at least an hour, really ideally 2 hours before bedtime. So again, 2 hours might be pushing it with our kids, but even if we can at least do a half hour to an hour before bedtime, those are fantastic things. An amazing thing I recommend to parents, especially when their kids are younger, is reading with your kids. I think there's nothing better than that. I always say there's 3 benefits when you do that. A, it helps them fall asleep. 2, it's a great one-on-one bonding experience between you and them. And then lastly, it helps their reading. And reading, I always say, is the most important things kids can get out of school in terms of the academics parts. Because no matter what you do in life, there'll be some reading involved.
Yes.
They may not ask you history questions. They may not ask you, to do a science experiment. But there'll be some reading involved. So you get a 3-for-1 deal when you read to them close to bedtime.
Well, Jonathan, those are great. I like that. I'm gonna have to go back to that phrase again. Sleep hygiene. I love it.
Yeah.
Routine, exercise, watch your diet. That
Avoid
includes
the caffeine,
alcohol.
Jonathan, does that mean tea as well?
Well, tea can be decaffeinated. Okay. I'm a tea drinker.
Because I love tea. I'm not a coffee drinker, but tea is definitely something that, it's warm and it's cozy. I guess I just have to figure out which ones I can have.
Some teas are actually used, over the counter, like chamomile tea can be used to help people sleep as well.
So it depends. Madison's favorite.
Okay. Well, Jonathan, we thank you so much for coming. I think we've learned a lot about sleep. I'm feeling a little rested myself.
Yes, and excited to try to implement some of the things you talked about. And I hope our audience is listening closely. Parents, take heed to what you say about the electronics and the overstimulation, and trying to work on behavioral things first before we jump into medication. And I think that's what we do here at ABH. We really try to push behavioral changes before we push medication and have to just heavily rely on medication for our clients, our patients. So, Jonathan, thank you so much for joining us today on the podcast. We appreciate you.
Yes.
Thank you so much. Hopefully we didn't put anyone to sleep.
That's good, Jonathan. All right, take care.
All right, well, I'm Danielle Young.
I'm Wendy Grier.
This is Making a Difference in Mental Health. We're always striving to make a difference in mental health. We'll see you next time.
Take care.